Hello. In this video, I wanted to address and highlight how our three-dimensional form and how our cognitive being process and interprets concepts of duality, and what then it creates for us as we live our life, and then what we can start to do and we can start to use to start to reinterpret our life without the form of dualistic splitting. And so the the idea behind our living thus far has been the understanding that everything that we have been taught, everything we had experienced, and everything that we have been able to comprehend at all times carries a form of a split type of a nature. So, split form of duality, to where there's a good to the bad, and then there's the sadness to the happiness, and then there is the uh, you know uh, abundance to lack. And so our dualistic form of expression strives in the idea that the reach and the capacity for ourselves as a divine interpretation on this plane can be reached in the highest form of interpretation when we split the essence of the wholeness into the nuance. And so, duality in our way of living presents itself with a nuance, right? It presents itself with vast number of possibilities for any one outcome or any one expression of self, because it carries all the ranges of good and it carries all the ranges of bad, and then all the crossover points of where one might interpret the definition of something being good or something being bad. And so if we take the concept of good and bad, or good and evil, as the Bible puts it, we we can see that the range has infinite number of possibilities of interpretation of any one item, right? If something comes in into your life, into your form as a concept, your human perception, your dualistic form of living, can then interpret it on the scale of these just two things, of good and bad, and then place it at any one point. And then the nuance even starts to grow. So I will kind of introduce this at the point, but then quickly take it away. But just so you understand it, is your scale, your individualized scale of the good and bad, and then where that item falls on it, is very much based on your individualized perception and definition. And so your personal interpretation for that item would be vastly different than the same item's interpretation on the same scale of good and bad for another being, or another interpretation of divine, or another spark of light, right? And so the nuance of all a version of us, all linear forms of us, and then all multidimensional planes of us, having the same sets of scales and the same splits of dualities, and then having the same sets of experiences, interpreting those experiences on the scales of dualities. And in this case, imagine it's one concept, one scale, one person. And you have a marker to, okay, this concept is interpreted here on a scale of good and bad. Now you take 8 billion of us, giving the same scale of good and bad, and given the same experience. The scale of good and bad is infinite. And so there's infinite number of expression and interpretations of one concept on the 8 billion scale, on the infinite number of ticks that you have on the scale of good and bad. And so imagine the quantitative version of vastness of experience that you could have with multiple scales, with multiple experiences within more than 8 billion interpretations of it, but multidimensional version of our interpretations on it. So infinite number of interpretation, infinite number of places on the scale, and then basically infinite number of experiences that you can introduce. And so the duality allows that scale to function. It allows our world to be endless amount of experiences, and endless amount of interpretations of self in the nuance of self and experience of self in expression of the I. Then we can identify with and truly take on as our own, right? We believe the scale of our emotions and the scale of our feelings and the scale of our expression to be this vast ocean of possibilities. In this ray of light, us as this divine spark of light, let's just narrow down to 1 out of 8 billion, right? Allows it to be totally unique and totally specific to our own signature of self. So when somebody says you are, a unique, uh, a drop in the ocean, but you're a unique drop in the ocean, the scale of that is unimaginable because your uniqueness spans multiple magnitude scales of duality concepts, goods, bad, healthy, unwell, loving, hating. There's millions of scales of interpretation that you can have what you interpret as your emotions and feelings on these scales. And then there's million points of uh, segments that you can place any one experience on that scale. And then there's multitude of experiences. And so your vastness, your being is so unique and it is so specific to you that nothing else and no one else can compare to the uniqueness and the essence of you and the importance of you being on this plane, interpreting all of these nuances and all of these dualistic concepts and all of these feelings of self that at times I want to say feel lonely and feel separate from others or separate from the whole, but are in fact so intertwined and so completely absorbed into the whole, um, and nurtured and loved because the whole feeds you and you feed the whole with this dualistic interpretation of the nature of yourself. And so I say this because I want you to feel the beauty of your life as is, um, as this beautiful mirage, but the most elaborate mirage possible that is you as a separate being, at times feeling lonely and abandoned, but yet never so, um, because you're one, with the air around you, and you're one with the light that is you. And so cherish the moments in which you have an opportunity to interpret a moment into any scale that you choose, and see it as beauty. See it regardless of the scale and regardless of where it lands on the scale. See each moment as that beauty. That this is your opportunity, your unique expression of self, living the ray of divinity on this plane, and how much it matters and how much joy it brings to the whole and then to you and to the nuances of you, and really it reverberates out to all 8 billion of us, and then we get to interpret this and see it and interact together and then build new interpretations and new scales and new experiences, and we multiply and multiply and multiply, and there's just sea, there's other endless and endless sea of beautiful interpretations of you. And this is where the butterfly effect comes in. That they just they extrapolate themselves out in these iridescent light beams of light, of this most brilliant, colorful light that we cannot even interpret, in our three-dimensional form. They extrapolate themselves out, and they have these outflowing, angelic type of butterfly effect experiences that flow out of your being. And just simple interpretation, as good and bad as it might be, is kind of irrelevant, because the beauty of the whole just shines through you. The love just pours out from the fact that you're having this expression. Um, and so, yeah, I wanted to take this dualistic concept that we at times look at it, and then they actually interpret it on a scale of good and bad, as something that is beauty within itself, right? And so the concept of its existence is beauty. And then if you choose to see that as beauty, um, then life shifts and changes, and then yet you continue to be in a three-dimensional space as a three-dimensional being, interpreting duality, facilitating duality, and therefore you're facilitating beauty. And just waking up in the morning and doing nothing, like you're facilitating beauty. You're looking at your hand and wondering what is beauty. You're beautiful, and the life of you, regardless of what it is magnificent. And then the radiance that you spread out, regardless of what you're feeling, um, is full of lifetimes and lifetimes of awe. And it's magic. And so I wanted you to feel this magic. I wanted you to interpret yourself as magic in just simple interpretations in the beings of you. Uh, and I hope you can start to see and feel what that means, what it means just to be you, and the beauty and the flow, and what it means for others to interpret it, unbeknownst to them, that everything that you have flowing out of your being, as the most beautiful expression of life. Much love.